Hey, Sophie, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
I'm so honored you're here. And I'm so honored that you wanted to have a conversation around what we're just about to have because you have a very special place in my heart, Sophie. And
Oh,
for anyone listening, Sophie is a friend of mine and I work with her. And we've been working together now, I think, for almost a year, I would
yeah,
say,
about
starting
a
back
year.
on. And I have to say, Sophie's probably one of the athletes I work with who inspires me the most. She's so hardworking. And what's interesting is when we work together and I am counting the reps, generally she corrects my count. And usually I'm missing a few. Whereas, as usually, generally, when I am working with someone and I miss a few reps because I was talking and sharing a story or listening to something, they never really correct me. They're really happy as to where they're at. So this is always something I've seen so beautiful and so inspirational in you and just your commitment to yourself. And you are such a powerful role model to your kids. You have influenced everyone around you, and she's gonna giggle and she's gonna not, shake her head. But Sophie, welcome to the show and super honored to have you on here today. And maybe you can share a little bit about your story and how you found really health and fitness and really rediscovered yourself.
Yeah, I guess has always kind of been part of my life. Ever since I was a kid, I was extremely active in all the sports, whether they were community sports or high school. But then, as college comes, university, I was still like I always kept something, but yeah, I also I ended up kind of like gaining weight over the years, as one not always does, but can do, as your lifestyle kind of gets more and more sedentary. I had kids in my late 20s, early 30s. That also helped with potential weight gain. Um, and yeah, like throughout my life, I mean, I was kind of part of that yo-yo diet culture. I went through various diets, as many of us have done. Some even like medically supervised, some that were, just the fad diet of the moment. So my weight definitely yo-yoed kind of throughout my life. And then I had my kids, and after I had my kids, I came back to, something quote unquote normal for me. Then as the time went on, it just sort of every year I kind of noticed like, okay, I'm gaining weight, gaining more weight. And I was kind of extremely uncomfortable in my own skin. I don't know how to explain it. When people ask, I came to a point, um, I was about 18 months ago or so, where I felt like I was exploding out of my body. So I don't know kind of really more how to explain it, but I just knew that this wasn't me. I wasn't comfortable. I almost felt like one more pound and I was gonna like a balloon about to pop. It was really uncomfortable. I was at a place where like physically I was struggling to tie my shoes, struggling to keep up with my extremely active kids. I have a 12-year-old, a 9-year-old, you mentioned them. And it was really just a really uncomfortable place for me physically, and we
Hmm.
can go into mentally as well.
Yeah,
But
and I think that definitely is, I think, the root to really all of the things that we struggle with, because as I always share, our physical body is really an outward reflection of our internal environment. And that doesn't just mean what I'm eating. Like that's a small part of it, but it's also what I'm feeling and what I'm thinking. And those are definitely something that create that expansion of those negative behaviors, those self-sabotaging behaviors that we oftentimes see in the physical realm. And so we're just going to rewind a moment because I know there's a lot to this story. There's a lot to unpack here. And so we first met, I think, maybe 10 years ago, I'm going to
yeah,
say, right? And
almost, yeah, almost, yeah.
yeah, and you came into the CrossFit gym that I had at that time, and I remember you would walk in with the car seat, right? You were this beautiful new mom. You'd walk in with a car seat, and what I always saw was a high level athlete. And you're again, I know like you're gonna nod your head and you're gonna say maybe something about it to resist, but really the way that you move, the way that your body just easily learn new movements, your biomechanics impeccable, absolutely beautiful. You were such a hard worker. And so I always actually saw that in you. You have this trait in you, this desire to really honor the physical body and to really honor movement in general. And so I know you came back to work afterwards. You're super busy in your world with your kids and with your career. So what happened then?
Yeah, so actually, if we do rewind a bit, yeah, to that point, so I come to your gym, I met you, I was doing quite well, feeling good physically, things were good, and then I ended up having like an emergency medical procedure that I really wasn't anticipating. And so, you mentioned, it's not just physical, it's mental, it's a lot of different things. But I think what happened to me then is I got so upset that this happened to me. I ended up having gallstones, and I had to have my gallbladder removed. And it was I had no idea I had this situation. And so I ended up kind of getting wiped out. And then I just felt it really brought me down. So from there, I was in like maybe not peak physical fitness, but I was like in pretty good shape, I'll say. I just did nothing. So I got so upset with how things were going that I just let myself kind of fall to doing nothing. And so that kind of cycle is something that has happened to me a lot in my life, where I'll peak and then something can happen, and then I don't necessarily deal with the change so well. And so I'll call it I crash, let's say.
Right.
And self-sabotage. I think you mentioned that. I've been quite known to do that. So I mean that was like 10 years ago, and since then, a lot of things have changed. But if you move forward a little bit, COVID was really huge for me, like for many. But for me, it was. I ended up. I work in the legal field. I ended up having a burnout. So a few months after COVID hit, I had to go on leave from work, which was a huge defeat for me. It was, I mean, I don't think anyone anticipates it. Anyone knows it's going to happen. I never anticipated that. But with everything going on, just COVID in general, homeschooling, not dealing with my kids, but like helping them cope with everything. It was really, really difficult. And not only did my life change extremely, but so did my kids. And so I was trying to be there for them. I have a husband as well, help him out, help everyone out. And it just eventually kind of all collapsed for me. So I had some time off from work, thankfully, and it took quite a few months to kind of rebuild my spirit,
Mm.
rebuild my mind, um, and then kind of rebuild me physically. But I didn't rebuild physically in that time. I was kind of focusing on the other portions, and but through that, I was able to find what I wanted again. Like okay, I'm didn't mention, but I'm 41 years old at the time. I was, let's say, 39. And it really, you know, through therapy, through discussion, through going through all this, I was able to realize what I want for my life.
Mm.
And what I want for my life is to be comfortable in my own skin, fit, physically fit, but able just to do what I want. I mean, I'm not asking to go necessarily bungee jumping or things like that, but just be able to go to the rides with my kids at this, we call it Larone, but whatever it's called, the theme parks or whatever it is, not feel comfortable in a seat in a plane, just different things that were really difficult. So I kind of worked through that. And then shortly after, I I came to a realization that I really needed to do something, and that given my past experiences and just sort of the highs and the lows, and as I was mentioning, kind of how I've gone, as soon as something happens, I sort of fall off mm, fall off track, let's say. I decided to have a procedure to help me lose weight, essentially.
Right, right. So we're gonna jump into that in just a moment, but I actually want to ask you a question. It's just something I noticed as you're sharing, and there's this tendency for all or none, right? And so I
Mhm.
think even with dieting, and especially when we have this history of dieting for so long, we have this tendency of I'm really good and I'm succeeding if I'm sticking to the plan and getting the results that the plan has promised. And then there's this sense of failure when I miss one day because I'm putting so much weight on that one day that that ruins everything. And so I feel almost as you're sharing the story of the burnout that you had in during COVID, I'm almost feeling like it was the same sense of taking on so much responsibility, having it to be so perfect, having to really be that person for everyone and taking on everyone else's stuff. And so where are you now with that type of energy or that type of almost expectation for yourself?
I've definitely made a lot of headway. I've learned to set limits, to set boundaries. I've learned my own boundaries, absolutely. Doesn't mean, they're not elastic a little bit sometimes, but I'm definitely able to kind of step back and say, okay, Sophie, can you actually do this? Is this good for you at this time? Um, I lead a very busy life, like most parents who have kids in various activities. I volunteer in most of their activities, but I've also stepped back from certain things. I dedicate, I almost have buckets, like buckets for work, buckets for activities, buckets for volunteering, and I really manage those buckets so that they don't, overfill and then tip over. I'm making time for me, just my training, for example, my 2 times a week personal training. I think it's super important. It gets me there. It's uncomfortable for an hour, but yet so
What?
great when it's done.
I thought you said you
No,
loved it. What do you mean it's
I
uncomfortable?
love it. No, but the trainings are like, they're more than what I would ever do on my own, right? And that's what I love about it, because I would not push myself that hard on my own. And that's what I love about our trainings, is that those 2 times a week, I do more than what I do when I'm home, or, whether it's go for a run or whatever it is. It's when I say uncomfortable, it's like physically I'm pushing and I'm doing more than I think I can,
Right.
that part, but not like the relationship with us or anything. That's great. But yeah, so I'm trying to go back to the question, but yeah, so I basically, I mean, I'm sure we speak about it a lot, but boundaries and just kind of setting up what I'm able to do and what I'm not able to do and being realistic with those.
Right. And so I'm curious just now the way that you show up for yourself. How has that changed compared to before? Because again, before, pre burnout and really viewing your health and fitness as this on or off thing, what I notice about you, Sophie, is it's so hard for you to cancel a session. Like literally you have to be traveling, like you're not in town or there's some sort of emergency. And if anything, you'll always reschedule. If you can't make that time, you'll always reschedule, but it's absolutely non-negotiable for you. There were many moments where you came in for training and you could tell like there's a lot going on in your world. Like there you had a million reasons to say why this was not ideal to come today, why you didn't have time to make for yourself today, to carve out that time for self-care, and yet you still keep showing up. And I personally, the way that I see you, the way that I just observe you and watch your energy, it has nothing to do with focusing on how you want to look, but it's really a very, very different energy. It's so loving. Like you're putting yourself first in such a loving way. And I could tell you love your kids and you love your family. We talk about them often. But there's this beautiful energy that you have just around how you show up for you that is absolutely non-negotiable. Nothing can come in the way, nothing can interfere.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess that's something I've had to learn, and I learned it maybe a little bit later in life than some. But I also feel like showing up for myself just helps everyone in the end as well. Because if I'm comfortable, if I'm happy, and then it shows in my attitude, it shows in my person, and then everyone else will be happy as well. So if I'm constantly uncomfortable in my skin, or and exercise is like great for mental health as well, obviously. And so if my physical health is good and my mental health is good, well, I mean, that can only be good for myself and everyone in my surroundings as well. And I mean, I bring up my kids a lot, and you brought them up, but what am I showing them as well? Like I'm trying to first and foremost, I'm doing it that part for me, but I'm also trying to show them that, even in your 40s, you can make changes, you can live a healthier life. They're able to see their mom kind of pushing through these things. And I mean, yeah, so I just find it so important to be showing them as well.
So beautiful. You're making me so emotional just because this just speaks in mountains today, because I think a lot of moms maybe listening today have always felt that self-sacrifice is how I show love, that putting everyone else before me is how I show my love, and if I don't self-sacrifice, then I am being selfish. And it's not selfish when we put ourselves first, because I truly believe that women, mothers, are the center of the household. We are the center of the universe for everyone around us. And when we're not okay, that impacts everyone else around us, especially if we don't feel okay about ourselves. Because I don't feel that we ever overcome that feeling of not enoughness when we are constantly not honoring our own selves. And this is so important, because I see a lot of parents really almost quote unquote lose track of themselves up until their kids have moved out and now they have that opportunity to do so. But what would happen if we all decided that a big part of our responsibility as parents is to teach the way? And the only way that we can ever teach the way is by doing the things, because our kids don't listen to what we say. And mine, for sure, don't listen to what we say. Sophie, I think for the 18th time this week, I've asked them to clean out their lunch boxes, right? And so you have to really lead by that example, which is what we're doing, and that's clearly what you're doing. And so I think this is just such a beautiful thing, and just watching you do that, I can see the impact that it really has around everybody who crosses your path. And the other thing too that you started to mention was the procedure that you had. And so maybe can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, so I decided to have a vertical sleeve gastrectomy. I mean, that wasn't the procedure I decided to start, but essentially, I started researching. I needed to take matters into my own hands. In a sense, I started researching different weight loss procedures. I was, yeah, I mean, in Canada, we have a public system, we have a private system. I researched kind of on the public spectrum, and unfortunately, despite having a high BMI, I mean, it was going to be at least 5 to 7 years before I could even do it on the public system. So, free healthcare, but it comes with some long waits sometimes. So I decided to start searching on the private route locally, but just to see, what's out there, what's available, kind of searching different surgeons. I didn't actually know what procedure I was going to get. I was researching the different procedures, but I mean, I didn't think I was equipped to decide which one would be best for me, right? So in the fall of 2021, I guess, yeah, I started kind of contacting different surgeons and just seeing, um, what they suggested, or you could have, meetings with private surgeons and whatnot, and they'll kind of give you what they think is ideal for your body type, construction, and where you are at in life. So some procedures are more invasive than others and whatnot. So I found a surgeon locally who recommended I get a vertical sleeve gastrectomy, which essentially is the removal of approximately 70% of your stomach.
70%.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Plus or minus depending on while they're in there, what happens. So I met with this surgeon. I had a very good feeling. This was obviously in the private sector, so have to pay out of pocket. So a discussion was had with my husband because it's a big financial decision, and he had to be in agreement because, well, it's a big financial decision. And he was, with me all the way, whatever I need,
Hmm.
no problem. And so 6 weeks later, I had a surgery date, which is kind of unheard of for any type of surgery unless it's, life or death.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. So, first, I want to honor you for sharing that. And the other thing I love and admire so much about you is that you share this openly. And here's the thing, I feel that there is a lot of stigma around a procedure like this. That it's almost thought of as, well, that was the easy way out and you didn't do the work. And what I love about this conversation today and why I find it so important is because that is total and complete BS. I've seen you do a massive overhaul, a massive complete lifestyle change. And it was not just that one procedure, because I think we all know someone or we've heard stories of people who've had a procedure like this or something similar, and then it didn't stick and they went back to old habits and sure enough came back to exactly where they started from. So can you expand on what changed? Like what changed for you the moment that you decided to make this decision?
Yeah, so I think, to be honest, the moment that I'll say everything changed was kind of the day that I was cleared for surgery. So, because they do tons of different blood tests and tons of different, like an EKG and all kinds of work to make sure that you're a good candidate. So the day that, I got the call to say that, okay, I, passed all the tests, we'll say, and I can have a surgery date, they proposed a date. That's when I had a real click in my mind, and I said, okay, this is it. I mean, from there, it's pretty quick because, you have a pre-surgery diet, a liver shrinking diet, they call it. So you have 2 weeks where you're just on shakes. And I'm telling you, if you can get through that from
Yes.
where I was coming from. No, but I mean, and honestly, it wasn't even that hard because I knew what I was getting in the end. I knew what I was doing it for. It wasn't a split second decision. There was so much behind this that made me want to go forward with the procedure that it really wasn't so bad in the end. Um, so yeah, so I did the whole preparation. That went well, and then I had surgery in March of 2022. Um, and everything went well. I mean, obviously, it's a surgery. They put you under, so it comes with little things and whatnot. But overall, I mean, it was a really good experience as far as private healthcare goes. It was the whole thing was that the surgeon was great. Lots of follow-up care, and that's kind of why I picked to go back a bit. I picked this surgeon as well because there was a full 6 months of follow-up care, which was blood tests, which was weekly nutritional, like with a nutritionist weekly, and not just weekly. If I had a question,
Mm.
send a message, get a message back half an hour later. So super interactive. I felt super supported for those 6 months. And even after those 6 months, if I wanted to continue, I could have, no problem. Um, Still to this day, I'll get like just a checkup email here and there. So I really like that portion of it. Um, yeah, I don't know if you want me to like go into kind of the details afterwards, but there's obviously, there's a few months where you're learning to eat again, essentially, and you're learning to eat the right foods for your body during that time, and not just the right foods, but the right amounts of foods.
Mm.
So it's amazing how certain types of foods will just kind of leave you hungry 30 minutes later. Other types of food will keep you, you know, um, your satiety level like will be longer. Yeah, so I've definitely changed a lot. But I think the thing that I've changed the most is you mentioned a bit earlier about the all or nothing.
Mm.
Very much, I think in my story or in our discussions, you've noticed that I've kind of led a life of all or nothing, and I've given myself now permission to not do that. So I don't, if I have a day where I have 2 bites of cake, I don't feel like I failed. And I
Mm.
guess, you mentioned the word tool a bit earlier. That's what this has given me. It has given me the power to eat a reasonable amount of food, to decide what foods those are, knowing that I need a certain amount of nutrition. So
Mm.
my first thought is to take in nutritious food, and we can discuss protein, fruits, veg, and whatnot, and then go to maybe something else, here and there, and not having I don't feel like I failed if I do have a bite of ice cream, if I do have a little something that's not necessarily, super healthy.
Right. Wow. Wow. That's it's just so so powerful, and I think I'm always super curious about the desire, right? The desire behind all this, because there's this knowing, and I think we all have this general knowing that, whatever I'm doing, this habit that I'm doing is not good for me or doesn't serve me. Like we all have that thing that we do, every single person, me included, that I just look back and reflect, and I know that I should know better. I should be doing something for myself. But why don't I do it, right? Where is that element of desire of really making something so burning and important that I must address it? And so for you, Sophie, what was that burning desire, that moment where you said it just clicked, the moment I was approved and I knew I was going in for surgery, all of a sudden, this is it. And what was that feeling that brought that moment of this is it?
I mean, not to repeat myself, but I kind of feel like it comes back to what I was saying earlier, where I literally felt like I was exploding out of my body. I weighed 260 pounds at the time. I honestly physically felt that one more pound and something was going to rupture. I don't know how to explain it other than that. And I didn't want to live like that. I was
Mm.
so uncomfortable. Everything I did was uncomfortable. And I just didn't want to live like that. I'm 39, 40 years old, whatever I was at the time. But I just didn't want to live like that anymore. I wanted a life where I can just feel comfortable. I don't want to be super thin. I'm not doing it to be on Instagram. Like it's nothing like that. It was really just to feel comfortable in my skin, to be able to do whatever activities I want, to be able to do those with my kids, to not have to limit myself in any way. If I choose to do whatever I want to do. I don't want my weight or my size to dictate what I can and cannot do. And that was the click for me.
Mm. Wow. So I hear the word freedom, and I think that everyone who decides that this is the line in the sand moment, absolutely no more, not one more second of this. And I think it's a freedom of what you're currently feeling that you no longer can tolerate.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's why I'm really open about it. And I'm like not open in the sense that I have a Facebook page or an Instagram page or any of that, like some people do. But with anybody who asks me about it, I am totally open with my experience. I will tell you the highs and the lows and how it's been for me, which is mostly a high. I won't lie, it's been amazing. My life is so much, like you said, freer now. I mean, I don't question anything. I don't say, can I do it? I can do it. Like I can physically, like I can physically do it, so I can do it. But yeah, and I just feel like, I mean, there is possibly or probably a stigma around it. When I told a handful of people before I was doing the surgery, I had a handful of different answers, or questions, or maybe not even questions, just thoughts on what I was doing, and that's fine because at the end of the day, it's what I wanted. My husband backed me up. My kids, even they backed me up in a sense. I explained to them what I was looking for, why I was doing it, because I have girls as well. That whole portion kind of played with me and made me think. And I couldn't just go into surgery without telling them either. They're old enough, So I explained everything, and yeah. And so that's why I think it's super important to talk about. And in all fairness, because I have, I've helped other people. Somebody gives me a call. Oh, so and so mentioned that. Would you be willing to go for coffee to talk about it? Absolutely. And if I've helped that one person, I mean, that's good enough for me because I know that also that person's life has been changed. You know what I mean? Yeah.
So, so good. I love that so much. And I feel that energy coming off of you. I really feel that sincerity. And just knowing you personally, I think we know each other pretty well. We're good friends. And it's very clear that you're speaking from the heart. But what I truly love the most about what you're sharing, again, is that we realize that people are always so quick to judge, right? They're so quick to judge us for the decision we're about to make or for the decision that we've made. And ultimately, we really have to turn inwards to find our answers because you knew. And again, your transformation was using a tool, but ultimately what I see your transformation as, Sophie, is everything you're currently doing. I know you joined diving. I know you started running. I know you train with me twice a week. And when you're at the pool with your girls, you're also training in the gym. So you truly are unstoppable. And here's what is the greatest takeaway from the conversation today is that it's still work. It is a tool that is used to empower you, and yet you're still working. And the work is a complete transformation of all of the things that you were doing in your life.
Yeah, definitely. You can't just go in and have this surgery and then not make any changes to your life because at the end of the day, you probably won't feel so good most days. If you're just, pounding back junk food, it's probably not gonna work so well for you, and your body might not tolerate it so good. So you're kind of forced to make some dietary changes, but nothing super drastic either in the sense that I can eat most foods. I would say 90% of what I used to eat just in very well, I've changed how I eat as well, but let's just say, I can eat some pasta, no problem. I just can't eat very much of it. Or whatever I'm eating, I rarely have side effects. It's really just in the quantity. But yeah, I've had to make changes, but I've also chosen to make those changes,
Mm,
right? So the tool gave me the chance to make those changes
mm,
because, I would have not started training and running and doing all these things when I was 260 pounds. It just wouldn't work. My knees hurt, my everything hurt. I walking upstairs hurt. I was out of breath. There was just so many, I felt at the time, so many obstacles to get through to even get to the starting line. So this gave me the chance to get to the starting line. And from there, I'm not, I don't know if I'll ever be at the finish line, but I'm working my way through the marathon. And
right.
every day, there's choices I have to make, and I make those choices and I'm comfortable with them. If that choice, like I said, most days it's very healthy food. And then some days, well, if it's somebody's birthday, I'm going to have a little bite of cake. No problem. It's a choice I make and I'm comfortable with it. And it doesn't mean that I'm a failure and the next day I need to stay and just watch TV all day and do nothing. No, I can still go for a run. I can still go train with you. I don't have to cancel any of my things. So yeah, so I think that's the biggest mindset change I say that I've made, and yeah,
So good. I think I have to steal what you just said earlier, which was, I don't think I'll ever cross the finish line. And I think that's a beautiful thing when it comes to fitness because there is no end, right? And that's really what we need to embrace. Whereas almost everything else that we do in our life, it's this daily task, right? Or if we have a report to submit at work or we were doing an exam, we know that there's going to be an end to something at some point. But what I love about what you said was, I don't think I'll ever cross that finish line because we won't, right? And I never actually see a finish line. There's always something else. There's always something to work on because if there was a finish line, we would just stop working, right? We wouldn't need to still continue to show up for ourselves in that way. And so I just want to ask you one more question around the self-sabotaging behavior that you had experienced earlier before you really got to that point where it was really the end. And I think probably even before you got to the burnout point, because I think that probably led up to maybe that moment. But I'm curious as to what was the emotion, like what were the thoughts and the emotions that generally drove those self-sabotaging behaviors?
good question. um, I mean, I don't know that I have a perfect answer for that, but it's definitely something I've done sort of all my life. Like I said, it was kind of all or nothing. I was actually a figure skater as a kid,
Hmm.
um, for till I was almost like 20 years old. Um, and yeah, and in that sport,
Right.
there is a lot around being lean, thin, Yeah, there's a lot around that, and I don't know that that's the root of all of it, but definitely I always felt, and I wasn't big by any means, but I was not. You've seen me. I'm not super thin necessarily, but I've always been quite strong, and so I was probably stronger than most girls, but definitely not as lean as them. Um, and so there's a lot around that. I think that like the psychological aspect of that sport was a little bit brought some of it on as well. There's just there's a lot that went on in high school. Oh God, a lot around, I'll call them mean girls or just bullying or all that I was in, like I was when I think of the things that were said to me or done to me when I was 12, 13, 14 years old, I can't imagine that happening to my kids today. But I mean, at the same time, it's just a part of who I am and kind of my process in life. So I try not to like dwell on those things, but definitely I think all of that sort of, as it adds on through life, it sort of it creates these issues for you that eventually you try and solve. I mean, yeah, so did that like lead to my all or nothing behavior? Perhaps. I don't know, to be honest.
So interesting, and I feel like the more we peel back the layers, we really almost
Yeah.
start to hear those voices. And I was I have to admit, growing up, I definitely had my share of hearing things that were extremely uncomfortable, even from teachers. And I had so many different experiences where really it was abuse from teachers. And I actually, because I received all that, I became the bully. And we always hear the saying that hurt people hurt people.
Hurt
And
people.
that's really the truth, because I was so hurt, and I always felt like I was singled out sometimes. I felt that I had to protect myself. I felt like I had to defend myself. And that really came out in a way where I just wanted to hurt people the way I was feeling so much pain too.
Yeah, and I'm sure that in my life I also did that as well. Um, not really to actually hurt someone, but just because it was very difficult, So how do you like externalize that? I don't know, probably in that way.
Right, right. So good. So one of the things that you spoke about was having boundaries. And I love this. I love this so much because I shared with you at the beginning of the year when we were coming back to training. Here it is, January 2023, and I was just recovering from a burnout myself. And so interesting because it really does come down to boundaries, and it comes down to that level of perfection that we have been carrying for so long. And so I know for myself, establishing boundaries was not just with other people, but more importantly, it was with myself. It was really me telling me to back off, to take a break, to really step away from things and start to be more present with everything that's going on in my life. And so I'm super curious around your boundaries. Like, what does that look like for you now? What are the boundaries that you have set in place that really help you stay in that healthy mindset?
Yeah, so I mean, first things first, as far as fitness, I mean, I block it off in my calendar. Nothing can, kind of move that or change it. So even with work, it's blocked off. So unless there's really, a super emergency, generally blocked off. I keep a pretty tight schedule during the week. I've requested, like from my husband, for example, I make sure that he knows what he needs to do for the week because, like I said, they're in multi sports, my children, so it's back and forth from different places. So it's not so rushed every day. Everybody knows kind of where they have to be and when. Um, and I get help. My in-laws help me. I have someone who helps me clean. I have someone who helps me do laundry. These are just, are they, I don't know, not frivolous, but like they're not everybody maybe can do that. But for me, it's what I need in order to be able to do all the rest.
Absolutely.
So, there's a financial perspective to that, yes, but for me, that's what works, spending the money there other than elsewhere. Um, yeah, so boundaries with work as far as the amount of hours that I do, boundaries with kind of setting a schedule and sticking to that schedule. And also, one of the main things too is not being afraid to, I'll say back out of something. But for example, I made plans.
Mm.
I hate breaking plans. I hate being late, first thing, and I hate breaking plans. But if I am in a state where I think that going to those plans is not going to help me, or I'm not in a state to do it, I do apologize, but I will break them. And you
Right.
know what? My friends understand, or my family understands. I used to just not say anything and then show up and be like all frazzled and not necessarily in a great mood because I just have so much going on in my mind and not being you mentioned present, zero present because everything is just a whirlwind
Right.
in my mind. And now I'm comfortable to say, look, I'm sorry I cannot come for dinner. I apologize, but this is the situation. And so I've made boundaries for myself and just kind of for others as well, but not, yeah, just expressing those boundaries to others, I would say. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's so good. So good. A lot of what you're saying, I resonate with. I'm like, yeah, I did that too. I did that too. And my boundaries really very similar to yours was always asking myself the question, does this serve me? Will this serve me? Is this serving me? Right? And always just thinking about that because to your point, when you have all of these commitments, really because you've overcommitted yourself, then you feel so bad to say no because now you look like you're disappointing people and now you're putting another layer of burden of responsibility on yourself because now you're responsible for how people feel. And so I think just coming down to this doesn't serve me, or this relationship doesn't serve me, or this particular thing that I'm doing doesn't serve me, and then starting to monitor your energy like it is money in a bank account, right? And so now I'm super mindful of, okay, where is it leaking? Where is it leaking? And always think about how can I conserve my energy, and that has to do with what I'm doing and who I'm around and whether or not I feel lit up, right? Because I think we have those people that we spend time with that we feel so drained after, even though it's sense of responsibility that you get to spend time with them, but you're not feeling so good after, or a particular task that you're constantly doing and feeling super drained afterwards. And I agree with you when you're sharing how you're getting help and paying for this help. I don't really see it as paying. I see it as an investment. Like that's an investment in my peace of mind. That's an investment in really more of my time. Now I have all this extra time that I can really just sit still in and not really have to think about this extra load that I had to take on myself.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's super important to kind of do the things we like to do as well. For example, I like to cook, so I don't kind of need anyone to help me cook. And there's I hate doing laundry. So to have someone to help me do laundry every couple weeks for me is just like so relieving in a sense. I'm not stressing out over it. And everybody has their own little thing that they would probably like to have help with. And I mean, it like you said, it kind of frees up space in your mind for other things and physically as well. And you're not. I don't feel like I'm constantly, the chicken with no head, just running around and not knowing where I'm going. Like I have a plan. I know where I'm going. I know what I need to do. Um, yeah, and I just move forward that way.
So good. So good. I love this conversation. So I love you and I think you're
You're
amazing. And
so
I admire you so much and I love the time we spent together. I'm so incredibly proud of you. Every time I watch just what you're able to do compared to even just a couple months ago, it's like unreal, and that's all because of your consistency and commitment to yourself.
Well, I appreciate that you accepted to take me on after all those years. I was like, I think, and we had that kind of introduction call, like a reintroduction to kind of see what I needed, what you could do, and I'm very grateful that you're in my life as well. And yeah.
Well, I love this conversation. And was there anything else that you wanted to share today that you didn't have a chance to yet?
I guess I mean if for anybody listening, I'm very much just a normal person. And I just went through a lot. And if weight is something that is kind of, I won't say ruining your life, but making your life very difficult. There's really no right way. Well, there's better ways to do it than others, but if it's something you've been thinking about having weight loss surgery, I mean, look into it. I don't see a problem with I don't know why there would be a stigma around it. I think it's just a great tool for people to live a better life. And I mean, you need to use it, like I said, as a tool, and there's so much more that needs to be done. But if you're there and you're willing to do it and you want to do the work, I, look into it. For me, it's been life changing. I think, just this conversation sort of proves that. Um, and I'm very happy with my decision.
So good. So proud of you. All right. So if somebody wanted, on that note, to connect with you, maybe to ask you questions, if they're feeling like they need some support, where can they go to do that?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm not super, social media in that sense. I don't have like a following of any sorts. But I mean, I'm on Instagram. I think my it's like at SLP1289. So I'm there. Um, Through Facebook, it's just my full name that I'm sure will be in the bio. So definitely, I mean, if somebody has questions, if I mean, it's my pleasure. I'm not providing medical advice, but I'll definitely provide my own experience, which has been a very positive one. I mean, I do this when I go into stores and like there, it, just to like give a bit of an anecdote. I was at like a supplement store, but closer to after having my surgery, there was a couple things I needed because especially at first, it's quite high protein and it's kind of hard to necessarily get that in. And I mean, I remember there's this girl and she's asking questions and the two, three guys, they're like super buff, they just, she's asking questions because she's having weight loss surgery and she's trying to prepare. And I mean, they just had no clue what was going on. You know what I mean? I mean, I'm sure they're good with their supplements for like weight training and things like that, but you could tell. So I went over her and I said, look, I had the surgery a few months ago. Is there something like I can help you with or kind of guide you or whatever it is? Like I'm totally open to discussing. I just, don't have an Instagram or Facebook page or whatever page dedicated to my journey or anything. But it's my pleasure to share it with anybody who has questions or who wants to ask.
Oh, so amazing, Sophie. I love that. Thank you so much for your share today. Thank you for being present today. And we're seeing each other tomorrow.
Yes, we are. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I love that. All right, hun. Well,
All right.
see you
Have
tomorrow,
a
and I'm sure you'll be
Yes.
back at some point.
Yeah. Thanks, Sherry.